I've really been wanting to make acting part of my life. And, I sort of initially got into it because I love being in front of people, and I also felt like, oh, well, it's probably going to be easy. I'm just such a charming, funny guy. And I've been finding that it's really, really challenging. I've been finding it to be, quite frankly, a struggle. And the other day I was at a shoot where a couple of things finally clicked, and I wanted to share them because I think I feel like I've touched on a truth about acting and what it is about, in particular film and TV acting, because stage acting, because you're projecting to an audience that's far away, things can be a little bit more exaggerated, and that's something that works well with thinking about portraying things. But with film, TV, anything on screen, and also presentations to people as well, there's a desire to be the character instead of merely portray the character. And you're not so much playing the character, you are being the character. And to do that, you really have to let go of thinking. You can't be thinking about your lines or thinking about how to portray it. You have to get to a place where there's no thought involved. And and part of that is the preparatory work. If you are thinking about the lines and which line comes next, it will be very hard to be the person saying them, because you'll be thinking about saying them, and that's not the same. So memorizing those lines becomes extremely important. But not just memorizing. If you have time, you want to work with the lines, because in every script there are little hints to what is the character, what are they thinking, how could they be saying this. So you go through that script, and you don't just read the lines and memorize them. You are looking for the little hints about who is this person, how do they react in this situation. And by doing so, you are building the character, you are building who they are and how they approach things. And it's good to play with those hints a couple of different ways. Sometimes, especially with auditions, you get into an audition and you start being the character with the personality that you've built based on the hints in the script, and the director goes, actually, the way I interpret those hints is a little different. He's not angry, he's actually just jerking off. Oh, okay. So you do have to be receptive to reinterpreting those hints, but you do have to be aware of those hints, and that takes not just memorizing the actual lines, but working with what do they mean, what could they mean to that person. Building a character when writing is a different experience, and that's something that I think I'll put in a blog post about this. When you're building the character, you're starting from the ground up, and you're working those hints into the dialogue, and it's this fascinating thing. But even just reading a script, you are still building the character out of that script and the hints inside of it. So that's sort of the preparatory work. But then when you get there, the real work begins, because you have this character that you've built and these words that you've memorized. And I found that it took me a bunch of tries when I was on set this past time, but eventually, to be able to do it, there is this state of mind that you have to get into where you stop thinking about the character, you stop thinking about portraying the character, you stop thinking about the lines, you let go of thinking completely, and you feel instead. So the last time I was on set, I had done that. I had memorized the character, I had built the character, and, it was my time, it was time for my, next one, it was time for my lines, it was my, it was my moment, and it took me take after take where I just wasn't, and it was so frustrating, and I was kind of embarrassed, and I finally got to the right state where instead of thinking, I was feeling. Instead of thinking about the lines in the character, I was feeling it. And to do that, I had to empty my mind so that the lines that were out here in the back of it and the character that was out in the back of it could be right in the forefront in my working memory. You know that thing where someone says something and you're not paying attention, but a couple seconds later, if you're quick, you can still bring it back because it hasn't been processed into your sort of storage yet, but it's still in your working memory. That place is so useful. So what you actually have to do is put the lines and the character into that working memory place, and have them be ready to fire off one after the other so that the rest of you can be paying attention to feeling that and the implementation of the character, essentially, where you're feeling that person, you're feeling those emotions, you're being in that situation, you are becoming that scene. But to do that, you have to have all of your focus to be on being that character and on the feeling, while meanwhile your working memory is pulling those out of storage and getting it ready. So while you're saying this line, your working memory is actually getting the other one out of storage and pulling it in the next one. And there's some preparatory work in that as well, because I find I have to build a mnemonic device, a link, so that when I say one line, I've built a link in there to help it pull out the next line, because my working memory has to do that more or less subconsciously, while my actual brain is busy being the character and delivering those lines. This is extremely hard, and it takes a huge burst of life energy. This is why it's exhausting to be on set and be in character, because you have to be thinking and feeling this character while subconsciously feeding yourself the lines one after the other. But when you can get into that state, it is this fantastic feeling where you are this character and your brain is doing things in the background to make you create this thing that people can associate with, that can make people feel that you are this other person. It's like being a skin changer. It's so cool. When I was on set last time, every take that I got into that headspace, I would be rattling off the lines, I'd be in character, I'd be doing it, I'd be feeling it, and then the take would be over, and if I got to the end of my section before they said cut, or if they said cut but it was still rolling, I'd manage to throw in some ridiculous, really funny comment because my brain was still firing on so much capacity that when my subconscious got to, okay, we've run out of lines, that's the end of it. Okay, look sadly off into space. Okay, and they haven't cut yet. What should we think about? Let's stay in character but throw out this funny line. And I would just be throwing out these funny lines while still in character, because my brain was just firing on such high capacity that it had time to do so. And then I'd have to go drink another coffee because doing that is absolutely exhausting. It's just also fun as shit.